Hi everyone, and welcome to the November edition of the WinUI Community Call. A little bit about the Community Call before we get started. It takes place on the third Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific, and so this month that is 1700 UTC. I've already seen some feedback in the comments about this being a little bit late, but it's harder to get us to go a little bit earlier as well. 9 a.m. is already kind of early, but we'll take that feedback in mind for our next call. And speaking of our next call, that call is going to be January 18th. So we typically take off the month of December for the holiday season. So next time we'll see you is the third Wednesday of January. As always, you can reach out to us on GitHub at Microsoft UI XAML and Microsoft Windows App SDK, as well as Twitter for @WindowsUI, and you can use the hashtag WinApp SDK for all the latest updates. So here is a little bit about WinUI. If you're new to the call, welcome. This gives a little bit of an overview about what our platform is. As always, these calls are recorded. So if you're not able to join us live, maybe due to a time zone issue, or just can't make it this month, you can always view the call afterwards here at YouTube. And for that, for those who are new, feel free to come back and take a look at this slide. So this month, we'll be chatting a bit about WinApp SDK 1.2, which just came out last week, as well as giving an overview about Azure communication services, which are now supported in WinUI 3 applications. And as always, we've received a lot of questions on our GitHub, and we're happy to receive more live in the YouTube chat. So a little bit about WinApp SDK 1.2. So that's our next stable release, our latest stable release, now available. Here are several AKAMS links, quick links to help you check out the package. So you can download the NuGet, take a look at our release notes. You can try out WinApp SDK. We have several samples with the latest features, as well as previous features updated to 1.2. That you can clone this repo, try them out on your machine, as well as the WinUI 3 gallery, so you can see the new changes to 1.2. We're also going to have Greg come on and chat a little bit more about those changes to the WinUI gallery. And also, as of this morning, we've posted a blog post kind of giving a big high-level overview of what is new in WinApp SDK 1.2. So here is our updates, our features in WinApp SDK 1.2. We've shared this before on previous slides, so this shouldn't be anything new, but I'll give just a quick rundown of what we've got. So we've got the media playback controls, dynamic refresh rate, to switch between 60 Hertz and 120 Hertz. There's more about that in the blog post. WinUI 3 is up to date with WinUI 2.8, which includes info badge. Widgets for Windows 11 devices. You can now create those for your application, as well as App Notification Builder to make it a little bit easier to create notifications, as well as the display information APIs to support HDR and auto color management. Some other updates is we've reduced the runtime on x64. We also support the latest .NET 7 and Visual Studio 17.4, which also came out just last week. So we're really happy to be able to support that. We've also got some of the title bar APIs available down level to 1809. And IL trimming is now supported for C# apps through C# WinRT 2.0. Let's see. And we also want to give a big thank you to all of you who have filed issues regarding bugs on our preview releases as well as our stable. You can see in our release notes some of the issues that we've highlighted that are now fixed thanks to your reporting. So thank you for checking it out and filing those issues. There are already issues found in 1.2 stable that we see and want to address. And so what's up next is some servicing releases to address those high priority issues before the end of 2022. So we're still figuring out exactly how many and which issues to include in those, but we really appreciate you filing those bugs that you have so far. And with that, I want to introduce Greg to chat a little bit more about the WinUI 3 gallery to talk about WinApp SDK 1.2 in the WinUI 3 gallery. So hi, Greg, how are you this morning?
Good, I'm doing well. Thank you, Gabby.
Awesome.
Great, well, perfect. Hey everyone, I'm Greg. I'm a product manager on the WinUI team. And so today I'll be talking about the recent WinUI 3 gallery update that we shipped alongside the WinApp SDK 1.2 release. So Gabby, if you go to the next slide. Cool. So before I go over some of the changes that we recently implemented, I just want to spend a few moments to talk about the WinUI 3 gallery as a whole, for those of you who might not be familiar with the app. So it's an app that allows you to see all of the different WinUI 3 controls in an interactive way. So you can see all of the different buttons, menus, layouts, navigations, and all the beautiful controls that we have as part of WinUI 3. And so, if you want to check it out, it's part of it's available through the Microsoft Store. So if you follow the link that's at the bottom of the screen here, so aka.ms/WinUI3/gallery, you'll be able to download it there. We also have it available through GitHub. And so it's called WinUI Gallery. The name of the repo is WinUI Gallery. So if you have any issues or if you have any suggestions on how we can further improve the app, that's where you can list those out. In the app, you can see all the different controls. You can kind of play around with them, see what they look like. We also include different samples, so you can kind of see what the different properties look like and how they feel. And most importantly, we also make the source code available, so you can easily copy paste the different controls into your app. So it's a very useful tool if you're making WinUI 3 apps. Awesome. So now I just want to talk about the recent update that we made. I just want to highlight 3 of the main changes/features that we implemented. So the first one, of course, is the new media player element control that we added as part of WinApp SDK 1.2. So Gabby just recently just kind of talked about this, but it's now live in the gallery. So feel free to check it out. You can, of course, see the different samples. We have created 2 different samples on the media player element page. So it kind of shows you different properties, such as the autoplay property. So feel free to play around with it, and you can also see what the source code looks like. Then the second feature that we implemented is actually a community contribution. So thank you to Madi Hosseini, who kind of championed this implementation. And so basically, we added a new Mica alt backdrop to the system backdrops page in the WinUI gallery. So as you can see, and as you can probably tell by the name, it's an alternative to the Mica backdrop. So as you can see on screen, it's very similar to the Mica effect, the Mica backdrop. It's slightly more transparent in the sense that you can see a bit more of the background window, and it's a slightly different look and feel. But it's now available in the app. So if you want to implement it into your app, feel free to check it out. We have listed the source code there as well. And then last but not least, this was also kickstarted by one of our community contributor. So huge kudos to Marcel, who's he's been the top contributor to the WinUI gallery, and he's been on this community call several times in the past. So I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with him. But just want to talk a bit about this new feature. we added the API namespace at the top of each control page. So the goal here, as you can see, it's actually a bit small here on the slide, but if you can see in the center of the red rectangle, we added the namespace at the top of each page. And so the goal of this change was to make the developer experience better. This way, you don't have to go through the docs to see exactly what is the API namespace for each one of those controls. It's right there in the app already, so it saves you a click. So yeah, those were some of the updates and new features that we added in the WinUI 3 gallery. A huge thanks again to our contributors. We've also added many bug fixes and some other features as well, and we have some other features coming in the pipeline in the next future. So in the next updates. So feel free to check out the gallery. It's available in the store if you follow the link that's at the bottom here. And you can also check us out on GitHub. So it's WinUI Gallery, the name of the repo. And so once again, if you have any suggestions on how we can further improve the app, feel free to create an issue on GitHub. So with that in mind, I'll switch it back to Gabby.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. All right, and next up, we've got Micah to give us a little bit more info about Azure Communication Services. Hi, Micah. How are you?
Hello, good morning. Hello, world. I am Micah Vivian. I'm a product manager here at Microsoft working on Azure Communication Services. I'm proud to announce our just released public preview of our Windows calling SDK is now fully WinUI 3 compatible and available. I want to talk more today about what Azure Communications is all about. Let's get started.
Great.
So Azure Communication Services is a product that allows businesses to accelerate their communication to the end users. People have been using various communication products throughout their lifetime. What Microsoft has brought forward is a product to allow customers to accelerate and easily develop communication processes and tools to allow them to communicate with their end users and business constituents. Azure Communication Services is a fully managed communication platform that allows developers and organizations to securely build communication features and processes to allow them to connect to their end users and devices. So when we talk about this, really, what is this capability? People have been expecting throughout the COVID time, they've been using various communication processes. What Microsoft has come and brought together is a communication platform to allow people to build out their own unique calling experiences by leveraging the investments and the capabilities that Microsoft has put together. So what we have, what's unique within Azure Communication Services, or sometimes also called ACS, are some unique things. Are identity agnostic, by meaning is you can bring your own identity. You can use various identity platforms to help authenticate and secure your usage. It's a pay-as-you-go product, so you only pay for what you use. The product has a scale of Teams and Skype. So Microsoft has a long legacy of building out infrastructure, tools, media engines, etc. on Skype and Teams. ACS builds off of that. So be able to leverage and use the worldwide capabilities of what those products have within ACS. We have a full available SDK libraries for Windows, iOS, Android, and Windows for a variety of communication premiums and capabilities. So we can allow the developer and businesses to build what they need. The product is fully Azure interoperable. So we're very excited to have the product interact and engage with various Azure capabilities. And the key thing here, it's full Teams and M365 interoperability. So you can build off calling experiences, one side with a person on Teams app and the other side using ACS to and build out that customer calling experience or communication experience within your own application or platform. So if we talk about the different places that we have products available, let's look at the different premiums. We have voice and video calling. So we're able to make a voice and video call like we are doing now, or what we do a lot of times with Teams. We also have the ability to do chat. So you can build out a chat infrastructure and chat platform for your customers. Allow telephony, so you can allow customers to get their own unique phone numbers to be able to call and build out the calling infrastructure based off what Azure has in the underneath. We allow customers to build SMS products and be able to build reliable sending and receive text messages capabilities, and also email as a service. So we allow customers to build their own unique email platform. So let's look at the high-level architecture of how someone would build a product. So someone can build, Contoso can build an application, and you can use it to build out your own authentication mechanisms. Like we said, we have a bring your own identity capability, or you can authenticate against existing Microsoft authentication. You can build it so it will engage with teams. And so you can have one person on one side be calling against Teams, and the other person on ACS built application or web page. And what the end full result is, you get a full end experience to allow customers to experience all what ACS has to bring. So one of the key things we have here is marketing and notifications. An organization can use SMS, email, or other methods to chat to be able to do offline asynchronous communication. This is a key process now that customers need to be able to build out full experiences so they can notify their customers asynchronously of updates, notifications, etc. ACS fully supports a variety of capabilities and to the scale of the world. SMS, that's a very key thing we're very excited with. We allow customers to provision and generate their own SMS messages. We have toll-free numbers, we have short codes available, etc. With the within the SMS capabilities, we allow customers to build out full communication platform full capabilities to be able to communicate with their end users via SMS. A fun thing that we've really excited to announce here that we're building it with is customer interactions. This allows developers to build communication workflows leveraging the deep investments Microsoft has in AI. So we'll allow customers to build within the communication platform we have, integrate into all of the AI capabilities that Microsoft has. So allow customers to understand deep content, deep understanding of what is happening within the call. Some of them might consist of call recording capabilities, be able to understand the intent of what's going on a call, understand deeper AI capabilities of audio, voice, or communication that's happening, with the result to give faster feedback to customers of what their problems are. I don't want to go too deep here, but I guess what I want to present here is ACS has a full plethora of capabilities with the voice messaging capabilities. We have various deep capabilities for what we present for video, for audio, for SMS, for email, etc. We have a very deep integration with Teams and Teams integration. So we see a lot of people who want to be able to extend the capabilities of doing Teams call on one side and ACS on the other. Throughout the COVID times, people were very stressed with the amount of work they had to do, and people wanted to simplify their life. So if people could simplify their life by using one app on one side, Teams, and be able to communicate with their end users in an integrated and custom way, ACS, that simplifies the customers and end users' life. That's one of the key things that we're very excited to see ACS bring forward. So I know I gave a very high-level overview of what ACS here. Here are a bunch of AKA links to look into more, such as the overview we'll learn more about what ACS is, some documentation links. We have a WinUI 3 sample, so I know this call is mostly focusing on WinUI 3, so let's dive into that more. And also we have our ACS's own YouTube channel. You can find that link here. It's been a pleasure to meet everybody and to do a high-level introduction of what ACS is. Gabby, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Micah. Yeah, it's really exciting to see what capabilities are now available for WinUI 3 apps. I know when we first started chatting, I was like, wow, this is so much. So it's great to have you on and share more about that. Awesome. So next up, just a little bit of news regarding WinUI and WinApp SDK. The first is with 1.2 going out the door. Of course, most folks go, okay, what's next? We have this now. Now where are we going? So as I mentioned earlier, we'll get started with some 1.2 servicing releases before the end of the year. So we're still, as I mentioned, still targeting which bugs exactly we're going to fix in those releases and when they're going to go out. But what we do is we prioritize the highest priority issues first with the greatest impact. And so we'll be doing that this week, next week, continuing as we evaluate those issues. So after servicing, we'll get started with 1.3. And as our standard release cycle, we'll get started with experimentals and previews first, starting in January, and we'll have more info about those releases at our next community call, as we mentioned, which is January 18th, third Wednesday of the month. And our general timeline for 1.3 stable is the end of March, early April. We're trying to get into a 6-month rhythm with the WinApp SDK. So that's what we're targeting right now. Of course, that's not our exact date, and we'll continue to clarify and give that more of a specific time and date as we get closer, but wanted to let you know where we're currently thinking. And then our next update is, adding Savoy on, is starting in January, our Q&A MC Savoy. So if you've been here on previous calls, you've seen him host our Q&A, has done a fantastic job here from the beginning of the community call, but he'll be taking over as the host of the call as well. So what I do, talking between folks, making sure that the call is running smoothly, saying hello to all of you. I mean, I do, more than that, getting everything ready. But if you have any feedback for what you'd like to see on the community call, he'll be the one organizing, making sure that we have all of our fantastic guests come on and having all the right info to share with you. So if you have any feedback for that, definitely reach out to Savoy. And I'll still be on WinApp SDK, but I'll be more behind the scenes producing the call and working on a few other projects. So it's been great to be your host, still here, likely still at Q&A. But Savoy, do you have anything you want to add as well?
Oh, yeah, just that I'm excited to start hosting more of this call. And thanks, Gabby, for doing a fantastic job so far. I know you'll be missed by the community, so we'll try to have you back on Q&A as often as we can.
Yeah, Q&A, new. I'll have my own, feature spotlight.
Just don't start a rival podcast or anything.
Oh,
we
yeah.
can't compete with you.
Yeah, a podcast. That'd be good. Awesome.
Just it's this exact same time slot. And
yeah, same time slot, right? It's, hey, what do you want to know about WinUI? Which one?
All right, cool. Well, honestly, thank you for the job you've done so far. It's been an awesome few years having you host this, and I know you'll be missed, so thanks a ton, Gabby.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And with that, I think we go right into Q&A.
Oh,
so
right into Q&A, okay.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to try doing something a little new with the Q&A format too, which is having people just pull questions from the chat themselves, since I'm going to be a little more focused with hosting starting in January. So did anyone have one to go right away, or else I could just try and pick one from the basket to start with?
Yeah, sure, Savoy. We can start from the bottom. I see a question just came in from Terry on MS test support, so I can field that to kick things off. Terry, the support is there for unit testing, Windows App SDK unit test libraries, with one caveat. There was a change that went into Windows App SDK 1.1 to enable project references to C++ static and dynamic libraries, which in turn exposed an issue with Visual Studio's test support. I've made mention of this on the discussion page for the community call and provided a link to that bug. There is a workaround, which is just to add, I think it's the Windows App Container true project property, which is what the change that we made in 1.1 removed. So if you add that back into your unit test project, then it should the test should succeed. All functionality should be in place. Of course, if you run into anything that's unique from that, then please do enter a bug for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Savoy, I've got one that I can jump in on. On
Please do.
GitHub, yeah, on GitHub, LucaPad asked, sort of asked a question basically saying like, hey, you know, if we hadn't been doing WinUI 3 and we really just invested all our effort into UWP and WinUI 2, would that have been sort of a better road for us to take? I wanted to answer that question on the call because I think it's effectively equivalent to trying to understand the difference between WinUI 2 and 3 and why we're doing WinUI 3. We invested in UWP pretty heavily and the UWP XAML stack for about 8 years, so it was a pretty long running thing. And the real thing that blocked just a huge portion of the Windows development community is sort of the inability to restrict yourself to the app container and the inability to take the skill sets that you had in the Win32 world and just adapt them to UWP. It was really hard for a large group of people to do that. I would say the majority of Windows developers had difficulty with that. And so that's really the biggest reason why we're doing that. I know there's a lot of people who have done UWP investments in their apps, and they're curious, like, oh, why have we stopped on WinUI 2? Why are we going to WinUI 3? I think it's worth understanding that we're really trying to make something that can work for all developers, and especially developers who have invested in the Windows ecosystem for, in many cases, years or even decades. Just being able to have modern UX, C++ or .NET, with the windowing system that you've become familiar with, and that can work in the apps that you've been investing in for many years. So, LucaPad, I want to say thank you for asking that question on GitHub. And sorry for the raspy voice. I'm a little under the weather.
We appreciate you still being here with us, Ryan. All right. Did anyone else have one up next? Otherwise, I can just pull from the hat here.
I had another one, Savoy.
Just go for it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Sure. Yeah, there's another person, mPetite2253 on GitHub was asking, asked a really, really long question that also included a lot of history into the app that we're making. But, to sort of summarize it as best as I can, they're basically writing an app that is trying to work across Surface Studio, Surface tablets, and also Surface hubs. And one thing I wanted to point out about that question, there was some other stuff in there too, but the one thing I wanted to point out there, and just to answer it clearly, is right now we don't have Surface Hub support in WinUI 3. We don't have a date for when that will be coming. So it's a lot like Xbox, where the capabilities that you need should be available in UWP XAML and WinUI 2. And so you may want to look to that technology for your specific scenario.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. And I see Mike's got a question to answer next for us.
Yeah, this one is from, oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I think it's LHAC. Yes, that's an L, not an I, LHAC. It's about some touchpad regressions that were reported in the pre-releases for 1.2 and why we didn't get them fixed. The priorities of how to fix it and make it into 1.2, I don't recall, but we do have a fix for that. I think there's a couple of touchpad issues, and I think somebody guessed right on the issue on the repo that the problem is that direct manipulation is coming in as mouse scrolling instead of touch. And so we do have a fix for that. Sorry, it didn't make it in. I want to comment a little bit too on servicing. Hopefully we will service this, not have to wait for 1.3. It's a regression. As Gabby said a little bit ago, for servicing releases, we look for the most impact. So I want to stress too that we also look for the lowest risk. The way WinApp SDK ships and deploys right now, if your app, you take a reference on some 1.1 release, you'll get the latest 1.1. Even though 1.2 is available, you won't get it until you update your app to point to it. With servicing releases, if you build your app for 1.2.0, you might actually get 1.2.1 at runtime. So we have to be extra careful with risk mitigation to not cause regressions. And so, like I said, we've got a fix, and hopefully we'll get it in servicing, but that's just the thing that we still need to look at, is what kind of risk is associated with it.
Awesome. Thanks,
and
Mike.
thank you, by the way, for trying out the preview and reporting it. We have it now. Just we wouldn't otherwise we wouldn't have it right now.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
We couldn't do it without community members like the one here posting this question. I see Bob has a question up next for us.
Sure, and it looks like my camera is doing a wait cursor, but I'm just going to go ahead anyway. So I've got a comment or a question coming in from Rox K and from Nikolai Pavlov that basically say the same thing, which is, how can we help? That in going through and helping with some of the fixes and to get some of these issues worked out, what can we, the community, do to help? As Mike mentioned, we've got a backlog of items, and we're in the process of going through and fixing those. And really, before we even dive into 1.3, we wanted to go and try and get some of these longstanding issues taken care of and get those fixed. There are a few things that the community can do to help that would help us enormously. And the first one is move to 1.2. And if you've got issues that you've reported, then try them out. If they're fixed, go ahead and close that issue. And that's something that we don't have to look at. But also, if it's still repros on 1.2, that is great information for us to know. And so we can know, we're not looking at zombie issues that have just been sitting there for a while. That backlog is there, and we are in the process of kind of going through that. The second thing I would say is we have been going through and cleaning out a lot of the issues on not only the repos, but also in the samples, in WinUI Gallery and also in WinApp SDK samples. And one of the reasons we're doing that is making sure that those are clean, and those are an excellent resource to go and try out. If you can repro an issue in the samples, that is the easiest thing for us to do, because we don't have to take a project. We don't have to do anything. We've already got the code, the symbols, everything is ready to go. And it's very easy for us to dive into. We're going to be focusing for the next little bit on taking care of some of these longstanding issues and trying to clear out some of that backlog that we have built up to make 1.2 a better product overall.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Bob. We have a question for Scott next, but before that, I just want to make sure everyone knows that we do have our guest from the Azure Communication Service here with us. And so if you have questions for that team, please drop them in chat and we'll make sure they see them. Otherwise, over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Avoy. Yeah, the next question that I wanted to field is from Nikolai Pavlov with respect to the unhandled exception issue, which has turned into quite a saga. Apologies, folks, for that. The fixes are all in. At this point, it's just a matter of staging them out into the proper releases. There was a gap with respect to synchronous callbacks into user code not being covered, and exceptions being caught and passed along to the unhandled exception filter. That there is a workaround available for that, and so I will paste a link, a pseudo link, into the chat. We can't paste links into the YouTube live stream chat, so I'll put something in there that you can follow, Nikolai and others. But otherwise, very, very shortly, we'll have the remaining fix in place for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
I have one for
Go for it, Ryan.
Great. I saw, actually, I think, Jose, you're on YouTube with us here too. So, Jose, you asked, I think, at the end of the call last month whether or not we had a control that could show big images and also be able to offer some selection regions within that image. We don't have a control specifically that I'm aware of that does that specific thing, but we do have the ability to host large images. Like we can support up to 4K images or above 4K images with our image controls. So if you want to have like a really specific UX experience, you'll probably need to make some kind of a custom control, that would host the image and then offer like a marquee select. We don't have something like that out of the box. Just wanted to quickly answer that. It is an interesting idea, though. I'd love to maybe understand what you want to use it for more. I mean, I can imagine that being used in a lot of different scenarios. But
awesome. Thanks, Ryan. I don't see anyone having marked themselves as having a question up next. So if anyone does have anything, please go for it.
Take something. There's a question, also Nicolay, about the ink canvas support in WinUI 3. The short answer is it's not something that we're working on right now for 1.3. But just want to talk about it a little bit. It is really important for us. The ink, one place where we're making a little bit of progress, the ink canvas control is a XAML element that wraps the underlying ink presenter. Ink presenter is where all the actual inking is happening. There should be a way to get a regular long-standing existing Windows ink presenter and use it with a WinUI 3 app. So it's a lower level, more primitive. It doesn't have like the inking controls, the little UI controls where you can pick the color of the ink and the eraser and things like that. But a low level primitive, there should be a way to get that to work, and we're working on a sample. So they'll be missing some things. It'll be kind of primitive, but hopefully that will help in the meantime. It's definitely something that we want to get to soon, but not on track for 1.3.
Thanks, Mike. We have a lot of new questions coming in for the team. So if anyone has one ready, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. There was a question that H asked with respect to APIs. And in the end, I think this question settled down to just how to combine Windows namespace types with Windows App SDK Microsoft namespace types, which admittedly is a bit confusing to developers to know which of those namespaces to reach for, as a number of, much of the UI stack that Windows App SDK provides is a mirrored from the Windows UI XAML and related namespaces, which are not to be used in a Windows App SDK application, but that doesn't mean that you can't use other Windows namespaces. So I just wanted to touch on that and say that we're aware of that confusion. For a C# app, it's a lot easier. The projections take care of carefully segregating those two groups of namespaces to ensure that you have the right combination. For a C++ WinRT app, there isn't that separation. And so it's a bit confusing, but we do have that, and we're aware of that. It's in backlog to try to find a better way to serve those developers.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Whoever has one next, please go ahead.
Boy, I can just do one here. I noticed that in the chat, I was just typing an answer in the chat, but I can just answer it on the call. Rarisma was asking about open source. The latest update on that is I've asked a couple people on the team to basically sort of take a look at this freshly and see if we can come up with sort of a charted path forward. So we're going to they're actually sort of mid-stride in this. I think we're probably going to have a sense of it by end of this month. And I'd be happy to give some kind of an update on the January call on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
There's one here from Nicolay. Again, this is about, where was it, Nicolay? Shoot, no, I can't remember who it was from. Same forever. About writing WinUI in C#. This question always gets a little confusing. You can write WinUI in C#. XAML markup is, I think of it as just a programming language. It just calls constructors and property setters and event adders. So the API is fully accessible in C#, so you can write your whole UI in C#. The one thing that's a little bit tricky is data templates, but even that you can do in C#. But I think this question might be in reference to C# markup, which I think is also called Fluent, which is a little confusing, in Xamarin Forms and Maui. And that's something that's super cool. Somebody in our team actually is part of a hackathon project, played around with adding something like that for WinUI. It's not something that we're actively working on right now, but it would be cool to add. It might even be possible to add as like the thing that Keith did as a prototype. I think he did it entirely as an external library. So it'd be cool to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Bob, I think you had the next question here.
Yep. So the question comes in from, and I apologize if I'm murdering your last name here, Rick Palmzins. And the question is, what is the progress on supporting interactive controls, such as a button or search bar on the title bar? In looking at the title bars, one of the things that we heard resounding feedback on, they were really confusing and it was way more complex than it needed to be. That we had an API set on app window and then we had a WinUI one. One of the first things that we're doing is looking to simplify that and to make just the default experience easier to use for as many people as possible. As a part of that, we're looking to really bring those together so that you're not choosing between one or the other. As a part of that exercise, one of the scenarios that we are looking at is looking at the controls in the title bar. But that's one of the few places where people do want to extend that. And so we had a spec review actually this week where we were going through and talking about here's how we can simplify the API. Here's how we can have the two working together and have a more cohesive, consistent experience across both app window and the WinUI title bar, and then looking to then extend that into the search controls. We're still working on that, but that is something that we will have further updates as we get into to 1.3.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Who is up next? I think we don't have anyone here. So anyone who has a question, please go for it.
Actually, I can go ahead and grab. So
keep going, Bob.
Raphael was asking, so what is going on with the repo triaging effort? There's been some things going on. And yes, that is actually my team that is going through and looking at that. This is a part of the process that I mentioned with going and attacking the backlog. And part of the effort that we're doing is getting those triaged into the appropriate teams so that teams can be looking at that on their own and then looking to mine for gold. At this point, it is better for us to be fixing things than to spend a lot of time analyzing. But at the same time, we want to get it so that teams can be looking at their own items and not one person trying to look at 2,700 items, because that just doesn't scale at all. So yes, that is a part of our conscious effort, and more to come.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Whoever wants to go next, please do.
Sure. Yes, I'll take a couple. AgH also asked or entered an issue about a fail-fast exception with 1.2, and I just wanted to acknowledge that we have that in hand now. This actually looks familiar to something that we've seen before. So hopefully we'll have a resolution for that shortly. And then I'll also take a question from Juan Mejia Velez. And the question is regarding a background task. There is a sample for that. There's kind of a meta question buried here, which is that it's not as easy to know how to use a C# projection now as it used to be with UWP, where the compiler provided the projection to WinRT types. That's true. That is true that it's not as discoverable to know how to make use of those types from a C# app. And we're giving some thought as to how to make that easier to inform the developer that they need to produce their own projection. But it is totally technically possible to do so. And there's a background task sample that I've linked on the discussion page as well for Juan.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. And if you had more, please go ahead. I think we have no shortage of questions.
I'll take one here about unsealing all the controls. Part of the question was, is this even worth opening a discussion on? I think it is. I think it's there already. Something we'd love to do. Haven't entirely figured out for sure if it creates a binary compatibility problem or not. I think I've gone through it, and on paper it does not, but it's something that we need to test. We get a lot of complaints about the mix of sealed and unsealed we have, and honestly, it's just history. There was a time where there was a technical problem where it was technically difficult to unseal the controls, and so we were selective about which ones we unsealed, and then that problem went away, and we got kind of locked into it because of binary compatibility. But there's always prioritization, but this is what I would love to do too, to get things unsealed.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Who's ever ready, please go ahead. And I can also make a shout out once more for our friends on the Azure Communication Services team. If folks in the stream have questions for our friend Mikey here, please let us know.
I'm caught up on the ones I was going to jump in on, Savoy. Anyone else got any?
We're all looking through the chat.
Yeah.
The chat and the discussion and the repo.
I'm also taking a look through here real quick. Yeah, well, if we've wrapped up covering all the questions that we're ready to here on this call, we can always end a few minutes early and turn our attention to GitHub if folks have any more questions to ask after the stream's ended. All right, looks like it's pretty quiet here on our side. So as always, folks, thanks for tuning in and asking these questions both on GitHub and in the YouTube chat. If we missed anything that you want to see us cover, please do go let us know on GitHub. Gabby, did I see you put a hand up? Oh, no. Okay.
There are a few that just came in, actually. Sorry, I guess this is probably going to be a theme as we try to wrap up. But I'll answer them quickly. Rizma was asking around .NET 7 support for WinUI 3. Our 1.2 release is ready-made for .NET 7. Is that correct, guys?
Yes,
correct.
Yeah, thought that was true. Wanted to make sure I wasn't lying. So we should be in good shape there, Rizma. Just make sure that you update to 1.2, which just came out. Wahid asked, is there any update on the 1.3 roadmap? And there was actually a person on GitHub that asked that too. The answer is we're still working on sort of finding details as to what we're going to do in 1.3. But what I will say is I can at least sort of frame the release rather than talking about like specific features, because those take a little bit longer to lock down. The general sort of vibe of 1.3, what we're really trying to accomplish, I think first and foremost in 1.3, is to really listen to the long-standing and long list of issues that have been filed in our repository and catch up on those as best as we can. 1.3 is going to be, I think, a lot less about new features and a lot more about let's just fix the issues that people have taken the time to file, put on a repository. Some of these issues are a year old, some of them are even older than a year old, a couple years old, and we've been sort of racing to try and get a lot of capabilities online and get parity with UWP, and we're getting a lot closer to parity with WinUI 2 now. So we think we now have the time to actually start paying much more attention to just community generated feedback and get to those issues. So I'm hoping you'll see that on the repository as we hopefully you're already seeing that, and you'll continue to see us making more progress there. And 1.3 is going to have a pretty heavy focus on let's just get some of those issues tackled. And that's not a roadmap, but that is a sort of a theme to the release. And I thought I saw another question. Maybe I missed it. Oh, Marcel was asking about hot reload and grid row definitions and column definitions. I'm not the right person to answer that. I don't know if anyone else on the call.
Scott answered it on the.
Oh, awesome! Thanks, Scott.
Great. I did. I just checked the status of that bug internally, and it's assigned, it's active, it's in work.
Awesome.
There's a question here to Scott that I want to answer.
Yes,
it's from Atif, and it's about the namespaces you were talking about, the Windows YAML, Microsoft YAML mixing. other WinRT APIs working in WinUI 3. You asked the question exactly right. All WinRT, WinUI 3 and WinApp SDK is using WinRT APIs, is compatible with WinRT APIs. WinRT is kind of like an evolution of COM APIs. It's based on COM. The thing that gets confusing is what APIs work in UWP or not. There's some APIs that only work in UWP primarily because in UWP there is one window per thread. So you could always find, you could have an API that you didn't have to tell the API which window you're going to use because you're on a thread and thread only has one window, and so there's no confusion. So there's some UWP APIs that don't work outside UWP. WinUI 3 and WinApp SDK is entirely outside the UWP. And when you're not UWP, sometimes we call that a desktop app. Sometimes we call it a Win32 app. I think mostly we call it a desktop app. So if you search for something like what WinUI 3 APIs work on, or what UWP APIs don't work on desktop, I think that's the search I always use. There's a page where we have a list of all the APIs that, or most APIs that really require UWP, or ones that you can still use in WinUI 3. Sometimes to use them with WinUI 3, you need to pull out the HWin and pass in the HWin. There's some instructions there. There's some, for C#, there's some extension packages to make it easy to pull out the HWin and call some of those APIs. So many of the APIs that seem to require UWP actually still work in WinUI 3 with the HWin. And then the other part of this question is, for example, WinRT display information. That one is more involved. I think the display information is one of the APIs that you can access with an HWin, except display information is also now in WinApp SDK in the 1.2 release. There's a version of it in WinApp SDK, and it's a Venn diagram. It is missing some of the system display information APIs, but then it also has some new APIs. And so that's another one to check out.
Awesome.
And thank you,
Thanks,
somebody.
Bob.
Thank you, Gabby, for posting in that link. I should favorite it. I always just search for it.
I do see Bob had a question as well he wanted to tackle.
Yeah, so Aaron Yip asked, is there any update on ARM? And I assume you mean ARM64. And the answer is a resounding yes. That last week was actually a huge release with respect to ARM64. So Visual Studio released their 17.4 update that supports Visual Studio running and building, debugging, all of that on an ARM64 platform. And with the 1.2 release, we fully support that. And so you should be able to develop on an ARM64 machine, and all the compatibilities are there. I would encourage you, we have made an update to the templates, and we had the wonderful experience where we were releasing and Visual Studio was releasing and .NET was releasing all within basically the same week. So we're trying to make sure that everyone is updated. There are template changes with 1.2. Those are available on the download site, and they are in the process of coming through the Visual Studio pipeline. But those do have changes to update the version of CS-WinRT, the version of the Windows SDK build tools, and all that in order to properly support ARM64. I will make sure that we have that posted with the minimum versions on that. But an easy way to do it is to update the templates and do that for your new ARM64 projects.
I just want to make sure to clarify, because I always get confused in our conversations. Like, we've had the ability to develop on AMD64 for ARM64. Now, with the new latest Visual Studio, you can develop on ARM64. I get lost in the prepositions.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that was a fun burst of more questions right there at the end. Did anyone else have any last ones they wanted to tackle before we close out the call?
I would just like to close out and say, once again, thank you to the community for supporting us and sticking with us throughout this process. And we've gotten the feedback from you on the things that we can do, and love to have you along for the ride as we go and tackle some of these issues and make the platform better for all of us. So thank you again for all of your support.
Couldn't agree more, Bob. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch this call, who asked questions both here and on GitHub. As always, if we didn't get to something that you wanted to see us answer, please do go leave that on GitHub. We have an issue type called discussion, where you can just post general questions and get a conversation started with the team. So once again, thanks everyone. And I'm used to turning it over to Gabby to close out the call, but I guess that's going to be me now. So I'll just wave goodbye and say thanks and have a great rest of your day or evening. And we'll see you in January.
Bye, everyone. Having a little lag on my end. Saying goodbye.